Parents of Reddit, at what point did you realize your kid is with the person she'll marry? Not a parent, but my dad told me that when I got diagnosed with diabetes he was afraid it might be too much for my then girlfriend to handle. When she turned up in the hospital with a new backpack with extra compartments for emergency jelly beans, a book on cooking for diabetics and a massively positive outlook on the whole situation, he said he knew she was in for the long haul. When they were visiting several years ago, and my son was fidgeting with his phone as usual, she quietly took his cell phone and moved it out of reach. I burst out laughing, since I would have done the same thing, and got a scowl from my son. They just eloped, but I felt like she was part of the family ever since that moment. That's quite cute. I knew my brother was going to marry his girl when he biked an hour into the city to stand with her at a bus stop for 10 minutes before she got on, then biked home again. Gasp wheeze, oh hey fancy seeing you here, I was just in the neighborhood wheeze. My mom said, of all the girls you've brought home, this one likes you for you. The rest of them just wanted the D. My mom said she knew my future wife was the one when I told her I was going shopping for a vest to match the dress my future wife was going to wear to an upcoming gala event. My dad said he knew she was the one when I told my parents she was pregnant. Not a parent, but ever since I was 16 my dad would always say this isn't the one for you after a few weeks of me dating a guy. When I started dating my husband he said this is the one for you. It's the closest to approval I've ever gotten and I have no idea how he knew. For the curious I went home and asked him how he knew my husband and I were right for each other. All he would say was, and I quote, my spidey sense, so whatever that means lol. My parents told me that they knew when I had gotten hit by a car and he dropped everything and borrowed his roommate's bike just to get across town to my apartment and take care of me. They said that they felt confident that he would take care of me, and he did. Parent here. We are a military family, and while we were stationed in Ga, my daughter dated a handsome blonde-haired blue-eyed boy I really liked and had very motherly feelings toward. He was always at our house and we had a lot of memorable good times. I was more upset than she when they had to break up due to our next move. She said she didn't intend to keep in touch with him because she was too young to have a long distance relationship. High school, she dated some real crap heads at our next post, but then told me she had reconnected with her BF via Facebook, and was it okay if he flew in and stayed with us for her graduation from high school? He had used his own money from his after school job to buy a plane ticket from Ga to VAR. We both cried a little and hugged when I picked him up from the airport. I was still a little suspicious about her feelings for him, so I made sure that I was present when she reunited with him when she came home from school. There have been very few times that she has done what we refer to as a laugh cry. When we got her puppy, when she got her first car, and when she reunited with him. That's when I knew. She told me later that for the year they were separated he never dated anyone else, even though some of her friends were pursuing him, and had no social life. They have been together ever since that day. She moved back to Ga with him, and I couldn't have manufactured a better man for her. They have been together for 7 years now, and married almost 4. His mom family and I are very close, and I am the proud grandmom to 3 gorgeous cats. TLDR. When my daughter reunited with her high school sweetheart, her reaction proved to me he was the one. Thanks for all the upvotes. I love that my most upvoted post is about my awesome kids. We need to see the cats. My parents invited her on holiday 6 months after we started going out. Said holiday was 18 months away. They knew she was perfect. My kids aren't old enough to be dating yet, but I remember a night when my mom acknowledged that I was probably going to marry my girlfriend, and I did. I'd been dating my girlfriend for a couple of years. We were young, and while we had discussed the possibility of getting married eventually, we knew it wasn't going to happen until I was done with my undergrad. One weekend I went to my cousin's wedding with my mom. The waitstaff kept the wine coming, and while I wasn't drinking, my mom definitely was. My mom had weddings on the brain, and at the start of the night it was if you ever get married, you should. By the end of the night it was when you and Carly get married, you should. Not myself, but a friend of mine has a son. He's 26 now, and every girl he dated just didn't seem the right one. My friend confided that she thought he was gay and not being honest with himself or others. She accepted it kindly though, and sure enough at 24 he came home from college for a week to come out with his boyfriend. My friend called me up so excited because she really liked the boyfriend. Great guy. Her son was so happy, etc. Sure enough 2 years later now they are engaged. His dad isn't too happy but takes it in stride and accepts that it's a good, solid relationship. Call that a mother's intuition. When now son-in-law showed up to dinner at my house in a self-unemployed t-shirt. My daughter is extremely ambitious, MD, chief resident, nephrology fellowship, and very much needed a chill as heck counterpart. He's now an amazing stay-at-home dad. You are cool for accepting that. A lot of times, parents would strongly oppose an unemployed son-in-law. When my daughter was in middle school, she'd been dating the same boy since kindergarten. Something about that one middle school dance. True love was in their eyes. It was completely unmistakable. They're happily married and I have a grandson now. If we count the cuteness from kindergarten through school, they've been together for almost 20 years now. This is cutest story here. My mother-in-law told my mom a very sweet story about how she knew me and my husband were right for each other. We were at Thanksgiving dinner and my sister-in-law is, for lack of a better term, a B. I'm pretty sensitive and have severe anxiety and I was taking her comments to heart and my mill said she saw my husband start rubbing my back and saw me melt at his touch and my cares kind of float away. I wasn't anxious anymore and I was okay. She said we look at each other like we really love one another. My mill is very observant and one of the most amazing women I know. So is my mother. Me and my fiancée are getting married this fall. But last summer, a few days after I proposed to her, we were at her parents' house talking about how to go about starting to plan the wedding. Her mum stands up and walks over to a large cupboard they have in their living room. She tells me she needs to tell me something. She said about 6 months into me and my fiancé dating, that she knew we would get married. She opened up the cupboard and it was filled with literally hundreds of decorations already picked out and planned for our wedding. My fiancé knew about this but I didn't. I found it hilarious. Also quite endearing. When my future son-in-law had Reese's peanut butter cups express shipped to my daughter in Austria because she couldn't find them there. I feel like this comment just made thousands of Europeans die of aneurysms. D. My mother-in-law just recently told me that the second I stepped foot in her house she and my father-in-law knew that their son would marry me one day. She spent the following years saying things like you guys should just have dad marry you in the backyard this weekend and talking about our future children. 4 years later, we got pregnant and soon after that we married. We've now been married for almost 4 years and together for 8. It's been awesome. I have the best in-laws a girl could ask for. Clarifying that dad is a pastor and wanted to officiate a small ceremony to marry us. A shotgun wedding with a happy ending. That's nice. When my mom met my boyfriend, now husband, for the first time and saw how sweet and amazing he is, she pulled me into the kitchen and told me not to let him go, that I'd found myself a catch. About a year later we hit a rough patch and she told me how stupid I was, that they don't make men like him anymore and I'd regret it until the day I die if I broke up with him. We've been married 7 years this September and my family loves him more than me. I wonder if he has heard those compliments before. I bet those would make him feel amazing. I knew she was the one for my son when she would belch like she had just drank a 6-pack and he just laughed. He would challenge her to belching contests only to succumb to her cackling and teasing, and all the while he would smile and tease her right back. Dating my girlfriend for a year, I've been in much longer relationships in the past, and as I'm told about 6 months ago when her mom asked her dad what he thought of me, his response was those two are going to get married. Went on a small vacation with them 2 months ago and her mom told her that if we ever broke up that I was still invited on vacations and she'd have to stay home. She's a lovely woman and I know she was joking but it meant a lot. Right now I'm in the process of working with her mom to find the perfect engagement ring. So pretty sure I got the approval fairly early on. My mum knew I'd end up marrying my now wife because she's the only person I've ever behaved myself for. When I quit smoking, she knew it was a done deal. Good on you, my man. My future mill told me it was when his aunt flipped crap on me and I held my tongue. She called to apologize on his aunt's behalf and said she couldn't imagine him with anyone else. This happened in 2012. We are getting married in 2 months. So excited. Obligatory not a parent, but I had a history of dating guys back to back to back, each one worse than his predecessor. I was in my first year of college and told them I would focus on myself and my education instead of dating. They were relieved as I was honestly quite an intense, uptight person and I just super needed to chill. Finding myself lasted about 2 months and then, oops, met my soulmate. They were but reluctantly agreed to meet him during my long weekend visit home. On the car ride home from the airport, my parents fell in love with him and the way I had transformed into a calm, level-headed person when he was with me. When we got in the house and he went to put his bags away, my mom dragged me aside and said, "Don't you ever let that one go." Going on 7 years later, we are happily married, raising 2 beautiful cats, and I swear my parents love him more than me. Raising 2 beautiful cats. Yes, haha, love it. I wish you the best. When we were about 18, my now wife, white and has curly hair, was talking with her dad, her mom, and me, Asian with straight black hair, about a certain play she had heard about concerning these Asian children with curly hair. Her dad then looked at me, then at her, then back to me, and then back to her. Apparently I was the only one to notice this, but I got the inclination that he expected us to have kids in the future. Lol at Wazen. That's the first time I've ever heard that. I'm a parent, but my kids are too young to date. My mother-in-law, however, likes to tell the story of how she knew when I was the one for her daughter. They have a large Irish Catholic family, with 5 kids, and a bunch of aunts and uncles and cousins, and they're boisterous and like to mess with any newcomers. My wife and her sisters have had several boyfriends go to family gatherings and never be heard from again. So my Mill said she knew I was going to be a keeper when I showed up to my second family gathering with a delicious homemade apple pie, which I have now brought every year. But I took the time to learn everyone's names and not only went along with the jokes and ribbing, but gave plenty back as well. But I'm a lucky guy. My in-laws are awesome and I almost like them more than my parents. When my older sister and myself started bringing guys home, my dad was brutal. I had a guy pick me up who didn't say much. Dad botched for months about how rude he was and how much of a loser he was. I was picked up by a guy who immediately walked over and introduced himself and offered a hand for a handshake, and my dad completely ignored him. Totally left him hanging. Then complained about him, too. When I heard that my sister was bringing someone home to meet the parents, I was ready for a show. I hid around the corner to watch when he came in. He said hello and then immediately walked over and sat down on the couch right next to my dad. Oh man, this was gonna be good. But then, nothing. My dad turned off the TV, shook his hand, had an actual conversation with him. That was when I knew. Dang dude, your dad sounds like an butthole. My mom said she knew my husband was the one after I got diagnosed with cancer last year. She said she thought he might run away because it's a lot to put on someone. He was with me every step of the way. We even got married while I was in treatment. Not a parent, but when I was 17 my mom told my dad she's going to marry him after we'd been dating for only a couple of months. No idea how she knew, but she was right. My mom told me that at 18, but then he dumped me. My Phil gave a speech at our wedding and said that he knew a few months into us dating, my then GF and I had moved into her parents' shed, which was fully furnished as a type of suite and disconnected from the main house, so we still had some privacy. He said that he knew I was the one when one night he was lying in his bed with his window open and he could hear the 2 of us just laughing and laughing. He didn't know what we were laughing at, but that it was pure and made him feel like I would make his daughter happy. So sweet, and I agree with him. Finding someone who makes you laugh and happy with pure joy is as hard to find as love. My son has always had a temper. He and his then girlfriend were home for Christmas and he was in a nasty argument with his brother. She walks up to him mid-scream, puts her hand on his face and says, "It's okay, baby." The tension just left his body. Happy for your son. It sounds amazing. I wish I could boast having someone that can calm me down by my side. To date, I think it's impossible. My parents came in town for a weekend and I invited my group of friends, including my future wife. out to dinner with them. At this point my future wife had only been a part of my friend group for a few months and we were not dating, just doing this awkward flirt argue thing. My parents had heard her name a few times, but didn't know much about her. My future wife was the only one dressed up for the evening and wearing makeup. She sat next to them and talked to my mother the entire dinner. Afterwards, my parents and I went out for drinks, just the three of us. My dad said so, about that one girl who sat with us. To which I jokingly answered I'm either going to marry her or kill her. My mom answered with, well, I liked her, and you're not going to kill her, so that was that. Not a parent, but the day before my boyfriend and I met up, we had been talking online for a few months. We were in the same guild. My mom said to my dad, I think we are about to meet the man Princess Pence gets married to. Almost 2 years later and we are now engaged to be married next October. Before that I'd been with my partner 7.5 years, but she never thought we would get married. I want to believe your parents actually address you as Princess Pence : I had been dating a guy for a few months when I took him home to meet my mother. At the end of lunch, when he nipped to the toilet, she told me that 28 years later we are still together, married 26 years, so I guess she was right. When their relationship survived a 3-year-long separation, our son worked out of state. She was still in college. It also helped that he told us he would get a job in his degree area when he met the right girl and needed more than a retail job for the future. After 5 years together they are getting married next year. My mom told me at my high school graduation that she thought he was perfect for me. We weren't even dating at that point. I was still with my ex. A month later, we started dating. We just had our 11th anniversary yesterday, and he proposed. Gay guy here. My mom never supported my lifestyle, but she reluctantly came around after I didn't talk to her for a year. Well, other than pleasantries. My boyfriend and I were on a road trip, so we stopped through her town for a visit. While there my boyfriend kept trying to get to my awful high school pics on the fridge. We were wrestling around and playing an adult-sized game of keep away. She eventually found my cute baby pics and some even worse middle school pics to show him. She later told me she knew he was the one for me because she hadn't seen me smile that big or being that happy since I was 9. She was right. He did become the one. Going to remind my husband of that trip now. BRB. Not a parent and not married yet, but probably the 4th or 5th time I ever talked to my boyfriend's mom. She said, I've been praying for someone like you to come into his life. I'm so glad that my prayer has been answered. We have been dating for 2 years. Both of us knew instantly when we met that this was the person meant for me. Since then I have attended every Christmas, Thanksgiving and birthdays for their family. His dad even invited me on a family vacation, which is a huge deal for their family. My Mill said that same thing to me a few months into dating, until somehow about 18 months into our relationship she figured out that I'm pretty liberal. I then became a secret lesbian with a black mark on my soul. We moved 4,000 miles away pretty soon after that. Haven't had that realization yet, though I'm starting to wonder about my 30-year-old son and his GF. He's very loyal, and had a different long-term GF for years, but finally broke up with her because she wouldn't commit. He and the new GF seem very much in love, so I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they took it further. They already live together. Obligatory not a parent, but my parents probably thought this. She was amazing, kind, sweet, genuine, and we looked at each other like we were really in love. My mom really treated her like family, even invited her on a family vacation. When we broke up, I didn't tell anyone for nearly a year. My mother gave me her ring and said, you know what to do with this. I guess that's when she knew. My parents keep asking me when I'm going to marry my current girlfriend. Should I be concerned? You should be concerned about rushing into marriage. It must have happened for my mom sometime before our second Christmas together. My mom loves sewing and cross-stitching, so she has made everyone in the family stockings, each using a different character from a set of cross-stitch patterns. Once, several years ago, I was looking at the ones she hadn't used yet and pointed to one and said, my future husband's stocking. On the second Christmas he spent with us, his stocking appeared on the mantle with that character. I have a relevant story for this question. A friend mine married a woman with 3 children from a previous marriage. He quickly became an important father figure to the only stepdaughter. He said she would talk to him about anything throughout her turbulent teenage years and into adulthood. Years later she dated a young man who eventually proposed. They are now happily married. I asked my friend how he knew that the man she married was right for her. He said something I'll never forget. She used to come talk to me about everything. About the time she met him, I noticed that she started coming to me less and less to talk about problems she was having. I realized that she was talking to him instead of talking to me, something that never happened with her previous boyfriends. And that's how I knew. My oldest and his current GF were together all of their 8th grade year, broke up shortly after summer break started, got back together a few months into this past school year, which was their senior year. They've both had other relationships throughout high school, but something has always told me that my son had been waiting patiently to get back with this one. They are starting college this fall in 2 different cities, though only 20 miles apart, and both participating in 2 sports. Football and track for him, softball and basketball for her. They've got a daughter, an Alaskan Husky named Lilo, lol, and have so much in common, yet they are able to go with friends to do their own things. He's in Europe for a month right now and she's playing softball and being with her friends. I can picture their children and easily see them spending their lives together. Not a parent, but my parents with my current so. I started dating her about 2 years ago. I remember my parents saying I'd be surprised if it lasted through the summer. I just graduated college. She had 2 years left. Fast forward a year into our relationship. My mom and her talk and Snapchat on a daily basis and my mom asks me, you can see yourself marrying her, right? Fast forward another year. We are moving in together and I'm working on the courage to ask her dad for permission to pop the question. My mother-in-law told me that she knew we would marry when she saw that we would visit every week when we went to school 2 hours away. It was more like that when she knew when we were serious. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.